the answer that you will see the AI come up with is a little bit generic in its shape and form. It goes individuals and organizations interested in natural language processing, machine learning, and artificial intelligence may find a webinar on the limitations and opportunities of using ChatGPT as an artificial sustainability consultant to be interesting. This could include researchers and academics in these fields, as well as professionals in industries such as technology, energy, and environmental consulting. Now, I don't find that to be very true. Actually, the main thing that I see as a limitation here for ChatGPT is that it can have a very hard time providing a great contextual answer, and that's where you, as a human consultant, yeah, I say please to the AI. I also find myself laughing at that, Frederick. That's a good point. So basically, the human context that we're able to provide here, where I can say, well, if you're interested in learning about the opportunities and limitations of deploying ChatGPT in your work, then I don't think it's very likely that you're working with language processing in the first time. You see, so it's one of these things where it's quite clear that it's not that intelligent, but it's really, really great at doing first drafts and doing conceptual explanations. So then, another interesting thing about ChatGPT is that it remembers the chat history. So I can ask a follow-up question like this: please make a list of the top 3 tasks that they typically work with. And then it will do a decent job of drafting up what it thinks these people will be doing. And I think that's incredibly useful, actually, to try and figure out if you're having a meeting with someone, let's say that it's a vice president of production or something, you can actually ask ChatGPT what kind of work tasks they will be working with, where they fit into a hierarchy, and it will be giving a decent answer. It won't be exact, but it will give you a notion of where you're working in the organization, what kinds of tasks are on the top of mind of that particular individual. So that's really interesting. Then, of course, you can also train it to tell jokes. So for this one, I asked it to describe a terrible hangover using the language of a Renaissance English aristocrat. And that in itself, I find quite hilarious that it actually does have this sense of humor. My head doth pound most mercilessly, as it is 1,000 drums were being played within my skull. My eyes, they burn and water, as though they were witnesses to some terrible affliction. So, Jay is asking something. Is re-looking at the chat history equivalent to building up context? Yes, that's my hypothesis. I'm not sure actually how it works, Jay, but it's a great question. I think it looks like it does. So in my line of work, when we're working on decarbonizing the healthcare sector, of course, I'm giving the AI a lot of prompts about, for instance, carbon emissions, environmental emissions, all related to the healthcare sector. So I might be asking about wastewater treatment in pharmaceutical production plants. And then it kind of gets to know me, and sometimes, even without getting a prompt, will assume that I'm talking about something. And I'll give an example of that. Here, I asked it to make Eminem style jokes. So I asked it to make Eminem style jokes about carbon, and what you see here, and why you can assume that it's actually remembering the context that I have put it to, is that it answers, I'm sorry, but it would not be appropriate to make jokes about carbon emissions and the impact on the environment in an Eminem style. So it's actively adding in the element of carbon emissions, where actually, if you remember, I was just asking about carbon. So in a way, you can say that the chat history is building up this context, but it's. I don't think that it suffice to cut out the lack of contextual orientation that the human brain just does tremendously much better. I went on about trying to get it to make Eminem style jokes, and I could only get it to make a joke about butter, and those jokes were not particularly good, so I won't dwell too much on that. It wouldn't even make Eminem jokes about lawyers, and then I'm just not really sure where we're at in the world. Then Jay is saying, an example of the same in my experience was when I asked it the best way to learn French, and now every time I ask it a question or interact with it, it drops 1-2 French words to help me with the initial question. Yeah, it's very polite of it. I do find it to have sort of a tendency towards producing biases. Someone asked me when I posted somewhere about LTAs, so the concept of life cycle assessments, and someone said, "Hey, how do you even know that LTA is an acronym for life cycle assessments?" And in my world, that's the only acronym you would use in relation to sustainability. The LTA would be the life cycle assessment. It's such an important term in sustainability that it couldn't mean any other things. And it seemed like the AI also struggled to come up with other acronyms that could be the right one. So it was kind of confirming me in my biases, which I also find quite interesting. Then there's this politeness about lawyers that's of course interesting. Then I asked it to tell me a joke about nurses, because I've had it tell me a few jokes about nurses in other threads, and it would actually agree and said, here's a light-hearted and respectful joke about nurses. Why did the nurse wear green? Because she wanted to be part of the healing team. And I'm not sure I get it. Actually, I don't think that it does a very good job at telling jokes. But it could potentially tell jokes. Where I see that it does a really great job. Let's see if I'm allowed to start a new chat now. Would be to say, please write a brief introduction to LTAs for me. I still have had too many requests, so I'll just go back into my pre-save that I figured something like this could happen. Here's another example of sort of if you write more elaborate prompts like this one. Describe the significance of cleaning your teeth in a Socratic dialogue. One has the moniker Socrates, while the other has an old Greek name that is a pun on tooth decay. That person finds frequent brushing to be a meaningless job and is vehemently opposed to it. But in the end, Socrates convinces the other man with a clever argument involving muskrats that can travel to other planets for some reason. And then I think this is really, really impressive that it actually comes up with this story where Socrates and Demodentus are having this conversation about dental health. And yes, Ashkat, that's because I've been mercilessly asking ChatGPT a lot of things in the past hour. So I think I've just